You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog, presented by the Fantasyholics. And we are in the middle of our MLB mini-series, and we are breaking down each and every lineup, rotation, talking about a few impact prospects and what it means for your fantasy league. So I am Jordan Jaika, a.k.a. Dr. Fantasy, and I am here with my co-host, Rydawg. Rydawg, what's happening today?
What's going on, Doc? How you doing?
I'm ready to rock and roll, and we mentioned it in the Indians podcast previously, but I think the Twins have a really strong lineup here, so a lot of fantasy relevance to talk about. It's one of the few lineups where every single player is being drafted in almost every single league, so I think a lot to talk about here, so I'm looking forward to talking about the Twins today.
Me too. I love me some Twins baseball.
And I think it's going to be really competitive at the top of that division with the Indians, and that'll be a good race to monitor. And we already both said we expect the Indians to take it. Their rotation's a little better, but we'll hop right into it. And before we do, let me mention that, once again, this is presented by the Fantasyholics, so make sure you go like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Fantasyholics1. You can go check out our content on our website, www.thefantasyholics.com. And make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. If you want to follow me directly on Twitter, you can follow me at Dr. Fantasyholic. So let's jump right into it with the lineup. Batting first for them is Max Kepler, playing the outfield. Currently going pick 143. And we've talked a lot about those mid-round outfielders with Conforto, Laureano, Mercado in the last episode. A lot of great value there, and I think Max Kepler is actually going about 20 picks beyond any of those guys I just mentioned at 143, and he's at the top of arguably the best lineup in the majors, so a ton of potential in that spot. He could hit 30 home runs as he did last year. He's probably going to score 100 runs at the top of that lineup, so when you're getting a guy like that at pick 143, I'm all aboard.
Me too. I'm a Kepler believer as well. When he's healthy, he really does crush the ball hard at the top of the lineup, and like this lineup could very well be one of the best in all of majors. There's nothing to hate on Kepler, especially at 140. I would take him as my utility guy all day long, all day.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think he's really going as that third outfielder utility kind of player. So if you're in a fourth outfield league, if he's your fourth outfielder, I think that's a great value, and there's a limited amount of guys that score 100 runs, so a lot of value there.
For sure.
Batting second, I should say, in that lineup is Jorge Polanco, playing shortstop for him. Currently going pick 152, and we've mentioned several times a lot of value and a lot of depth at the shortstop position, so 152, I think, is once again great value for a guy that's going or batting at the top of a really good lineup. That would change pretty quickly if he was to move further down, but if he's batting second in this lineup, he can score 100 runs, steal maybe 10 to 15 bases, get you 15 home runs, 10 to 15 home runs, and that's great value in a great lineup.
Yeah, for sure, and we discussed this multiple times. If you're not going to take one of those top four shortstops in the first 25 picks, we discussed waiting on a shortstop, and Polanco batting second in this dangerous offense, it could definitely help him for sure. And I think this offense is completely stacked top to bottom personally. So even if the nice guy comes in and gets on base, Polanco still has plenty of time to drive in some runs as well. So like you just said, 15 to 20 bases stolen, 10 to 15 RBIs, 80 to 100 runs for sure. I could see possibly 70 to 80 RBIs too.
Yeah, so a lot of potential there. Batting third is a guy that I know you like a lot, is Nelson Cruz, who is DHing for him. He's currently going pick 81. I can't really argue with taking Nelson Cruz at pick 81. You're going to get 40 home runs. He's in the similar category to Carlos Santana. For me, he's a guy that's older. You're like, oh, man, Nelson Cruz is touching on 40 here. So he's a guy that you're like, oh, man, he's going to decline. But, man, he still rips the ball. He has one of the highest hard hit percentages in all of Major League Baseball at 40 years old. So there's no signs that he's declining. If there's one critique that I could give him, well, number one, I think there's some value for younger players later on that maybe provide in other categories such as steals, scoring a few more runs. But obviously Nelson Cruz isn't blazing on the base paths. But if there's another criticism I could give him, it's he's only util DH eligible. So sometimes I really like having flexibility in my utility. And if Nelson Cruz, not that he's bad, is just plugging up space there, sometimes if you have an injury or a guy gets scratched that day, it doesn't offer you as much flexibility to move around other guys in your lineup. So if there's one criticism I could offer, it's similar to Chris Davis. He's in the same situation. But I think at 81, he offers good value overall.
Oh, for sure. And the thing I love about Cruz as well is like you discussed, he's a part of that Santana thing. But the one thing Cruz does that Santana does this, Cruz surprisingly does hit for an average. He is a career high 280 hitter with hitting 40 dingers and 100 plus RBIs. I mean, I'll plug him into my utility spot all day long, and I'll take him. I'll take him in the 80th pick. I don't care. Cruz is a mean hitting machine. He is the one guy that hasn't really had a bad year since probably his first year in the majors. So I'm definitely taking the Cruz all day long. I don't expect him to decline anytime soon. I think he's going to chase that 500 home run mark. I believe he has within the 30 home run range left until he hits 500. I believe he's at 4-something. He could definitely get it for sure. Then he may end up retiring.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned at the average too. That's a good point because you have guys like Edwin Encarnacion and Carlos Santana who can still hit home runs, but they're hitting 230, 40, maybe 250 if you're lucky. And when you really look at it, Nelson Cruz, a lot of his statistics are really similar to JD Martinez, who's going similar around pick 25. So, I mean, you're getting a guy, 55, 60 picks later with almost similar numbers. So, that's why I think he offers great value.
There's your value, Doc.
Boom.
Boom, value.
There we go. We're done. Turn her off.
Woohoo. We're done.
Number 4, speaking of value, I felt like we've talked about this guy for over 20 episodes now. I think this is the ultimate value play, batting in the 4th spot for this lineup. And he's moved up draft boards on ESPN, ADP a little bit, but still going around pick 70 on ESPN, right around pick 92 on Yahoo, and that is Josh Donaldson, batting cleanup for him, playing third base. And we've mentioned it previously, third base is a pretty shallow position, and that's one of the reasons I can't take a third baseman early this year is because of Josh Donaldson. If I get Josh Donaldson in the 7th, 8th, 9th round, I'm legitimately doing a backflip because you're getting a guy that's going to hit 30-plus home runs, usually a solid average, not really high, 100 RBIs. He's been known to score 90-plus runs. I mean, I don't think you want to talk about value. My eyes are lighting up right now because you don't get much better than that.
No, not at all. You're not going to get a guy 30 home runs, 100 RBIs with a middle of the 260 average. You're not going to get that at all. I mean, pick 71, that's great value for sure. I mean, those numbers it's crazy. And you think about how deep their base is. I mean, you can get, and even if you miss out on Donaldson, you can still get Chapman around that value too for not 30 home runs, but the RBIs will be somewhat similar as well.
Yeah, I mean, Chapman did hit 30 last year, so yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I think that both of those guys are, they're both in that category where I just can't take a third baseman early, and if I miss out on Donaldson or Chapman, then maybe I'm in a hole a little bit, but those are the two guys that I'm holding out for later in drafts.
Oh, for sure. And even if you miss out on them, I believe LeMahieu might be going right after him. You can plug him right in there at third base too.
Yep, true, very true. Number 5 in that lineup is Eddie Rosario in the outfield. You mentioned before that you really like Eddie Rosario, so I'm going to let you talk about him first.
I do like Rosario because he was a guy that wasn't highly scouted. In the past 2 years, he's only improved in metrics as far as hard hit balls, as far as contact, and he's got raw power. I did expect him to be hitting 6 in this lineup. I'm going to be honest, I thought for sure he would have hit second over Polanco, which definitely raised some eyebrows for me for sure. But Polanco has more speed, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it makes sense. But Rosario is an all-around amazing ball player. He's a 270 average hitter. He's a 30-35 home run hitter. He's 100 RBIs. And I could probably end up getting him as my third outfielder, which I typically do. And I'll take that value any day of the week because he has the potential of being arguably a second outfielder on the team. And if I can get him as my third, I'll take it.
Yeah. And I agree that the value is good. I don't know if I said it already, but he's going pick 83. So
Right.
He's going a little ahead of those guys that are going in the 100, 120 range. A lot of those guys that I really like. And I've seen Rosario fall a little bit. I personally think that we saw him at his best last season. He had a huge year last year, and I don't know if he's ever going to be anything beyond that. And you did mention his hard hit has improved over the years. It still is really low considering how much raw power that he does have. So, maybe he does have the ability to be beyond what he was last year. But overall, I think that's good value for him. And I've had him even in leagues as my third outfielder before. So if you can get him in that position, then you're in a good spot. But yeah, once again, even if he's batting second, fifth in this lineup, either position is a pretty good spot for him. And at 83, I really can't argue with it.
Not at all. And he is very fun to watch too. I hope he continues this consistent pace. I don't expect him to fall, but like you said, I don't think he could be going any higher in terms of stats either. I think he's kind of capped, but if he can go higher, I'm all on board on the Rosario train, especially in our dynasty leagues we're in together.
Yeah, and we talked about this a few months ago when we started Dynasty League. You were talking about George Springer, but it's important, I think, in draft situations, and the Twins are a good lineup and a good situation. So that's one of the reasons that I like them too.
Yeah, I like to call it my three-headed monster in every league I try. I don't know why. I always try to get the Soto, Springer, Rosario punch. That's why I like to call it the 1, 2, 3. And those guys are just great ball players. I love watching them. Springer's on that cheating scandal with the Astros, but he always seems to fall under the radar. He always lays low somehow compared to the Bregmans and the Altuve, even though I think Springer is better than what he is. But, yeah, Rosario, Springer, and Soto. I try to go to them 1, 2, 3 any way I can.
Yep.
I don't know why.
It's a good combo, though. You can't argue if that's your outfield.
Oh, yeah.
Number 6 in this lineup is Mitch Garver catching for him. He's currently going pick 130, right around the 5th catcher off the board. I actually like Mitch Garver. Once again, he's a catcher in a good offense. Great players hitting ahead of him, so he's going to have an opportunity to drive in runs. And he's one of the few catchers that hit 30 home runs last year. Him and Gary Sanchez were two of the top dogs. So if you miss out on Real Muto and Sanchez, I really like, a lot of people have Grandal as their third after those two. I actually have Mitch Garver third after that. I love when you can get a catcher that hits 30 home runs. We've talked about how easy it is to find a catcher that hits 20 home runs, but as soon as you get to that 30 mark, it becomes extremely difficult. So before you slip too much further, Garver's going right around the same range as Will Smith. Will Smith goes about 10 to 15 picks later, but still about a round difference. But I think Garver's in a great offense, great home run potential, and I personally like him.
I like Mitch Garver too. He is a perfect fit for this offense, isn't he? Because he doesn't have to have too much pressure on his hands. He's batting late in the lineup. He can just go back, do his thing, and clean the bases. So I like him. I think he can have 80 to 85 RBIs along with 30 home runs again this year. There's nothing to hate on Mitch Garver, and the metrics show that he's only improving as well, which is very scary.
Yeah, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he finishes as the number 1 fantasy catcher. I don't think many people have that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Not that I'd say he's the number one fantasy catcher, but I don't think it would shock me if he was. So I like his upside there. And we haven't mentioned yet, this is a great ballpark, too, for this lineup. So that only helps all of these guys' case.
Absolutely. It's a tremendous ballpark for these guys.
Then batting seventh in that lineup is a younger guy that came up and played pretty well last year, Luis Arraez. He is going to be playing second for him. Also has third base and outfield eligibility. He is currently going pick 237. I think he has a ton more potential, obviously, if he's able to move up in this lineup. But he hit for a really high average when he did come up last year. He was up over 300, so I think he has a lot of potential. And I've said it before, I really like trying to target guys later in the draft that hit for average because I think that's really hard to find. And I can find power anywhere. Power is going to be on the waiver wire after the draft, so I never go into drafts personally saying, man, I got to make sure I grab my power because, it's everywhere. It's not hard to find. So I really target those guys that can they're well-rounded players that maybe have a chance to hit 20 home runs, 20 steals, guys that have a high average. And so he's going as a late-round dart throw right now, so I like him in that position. And it seems like so far we've liked everybody in this lineup, but it's kind of weird because their offense was tremendous last year, and it seems like a lot of the players in this lineup are still being undervalued for fantasy purposes.
I agree. And you think about it, outside of Josh Donaldson, it's the same exact lineup they had the second half of the league. I like Arraez as well. He's actually the one second baseman. Like, okay, if I miss out on LeMahieu and if I miss out on the guys early and if I miss out on Witt, I'm just going to wait for the last pick of the draft and take Arraez because I like his talent. He is going to be he reminds me so much of Mondesi from Kansas City as well as Witt, just by the way he hits the ball and the way he plays. Arraez is going to be really fun to watch. Even late in this lineup, where this lineup is so deep, he could definitely make an impact to the point where he could possibly have 60 to 70 RBIs if he stays healthy. We like you said, we like everyone on this roster. The value is great for fantasy. There's nothing to not like. Let's ship some of these guys and balance it out. Ship them to like the Marlins and the Tigers.
Balance the league out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, spread the love. This team is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for I believe the Yankees last season set the major league record for most home runs, but them and the Twins were going back and forth. So if it wasn't for the Yankees last year, the Twins lineup last year would have had the most home runs in a major league season all time. And for some reason, their offense is still being undervalued. So I don't know if it's because it's the Twins and maybe it feels a little weird that their offense is so potent, but we just keep going through this, and you put together the lineup and then I put together some notes, and when I was putting together the notes and the ADPs, I was like, none of these guys, the highest guy going right now is Nelson Cruz at pick 81, so this could be the highest scoring offense in the league, and no one's being drafted until pick 81.
What about Eddie Rosario? I thought he was going in the 70s.
83 right now.
Oh, 83 on Yahoo. Gosh.
That's crazy.
I would take those two guys. I would take, I discussed this with the Reds in a previous podcast. So much late value, and I would just draft the whole team. I'll draft the whole team. I'll get my pitching early. Might as well wait for these guys, and I'll just take them.
Yeah, I legitimately think that I could have 4 Twins in my starting lineup, and I wouldn't feel bad about it.
Oh, not at all. I'll definitely take Rosario, Cruz, Donaldson, Arraez, and Garver. I just named 5 right there. And I'd be happy. I'd be very satisfied. And if people will say you have 5 Twins, I'm like, okay, let's see how the season plays out.
Yeah, but it's crazy to think, but that could work too. So bottom half, the last 2 guys in their lineup too, still fantasy relevant. Mageau Sanyo playing first base for him. I would say of all the guys in this lineup, I'm probably the lowest on him. He's currently going pick 140. He has a ton of power. He hits the ball hard. I guess I can't. I believe he also has third base eligibility, so I can't really argue with him going in this spot. The only problem I guess I could say that I have is that he's lower in this lineup. And even though this lineup is powerful, he won't have as many opportunities as if he was higher in the lineup. But going pick 140, I think that's fair for him. Once you get beyond those first group of first basemen, I think you can wait and get a Carlos Santana, Sanyo. You could grab Eric Hosmer later, Christian Walker if you wanted to. But I think he fits in well with that group of guys and gets you good value and a good lineup still.
Yeah, for sure. Not Santana. I'm sorry. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's one of those guys where. So now for me, just I don't know. I've watched him in the minors. He crushes the ball, but something about Sano. I'll definitely take him on my bench. But I guess the value part. I mean, it's fair. It's just a huge disappointment after we discuss like the first 6 guys, and then we get here.
Right.
The first 6, 7 guys. I mean, I guess you're right. You know, if you had to choose one guy to not like as much in this lineup, I guess it would be Sano. And I mean, he is a 25 home run guy, though. But
yeah, I think one of the reasons for that is when he was coming up, he was a really big prospect. I mean, he was supposed to be a big masher in the middle of the lineup, hitting 40 home runs every year with a decent average, but he's really kind of been underwhelming. I think that's part of the reason that we're like, he's just not what he was supposed to be. He's still a solid major league player hitting right around 30 home runs, give or take, but he's just not what he was supposed to be, and I think that's why it's disappointing.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. I mean, he was supposed to be a huge thing in the majors, and then he just didn't live up to his expectations, and that's what happened.
And batting ninth in this lineup is probably one of the most polarizing players in baseball right now, Byron Buxton, in their outfield. The former number 1 overall prospect was supposed to be. So I was actually a bat boy when he was coming up through the Twins organization, and I actually have talked to him a few times. And I remember the coaching staff comparing him to Kirby Puckett. So, I mean, that's what there was rumblings on the bench, and I've heard managers of minor league teams say that this is the next big thing, that he was going to be the Twins' next Kirby Puckett, Hall of Famer, a legendary kind of player. So it's crazy to see what Byron Buxton's become now. He's still, when he's healthy, it's just those injuries that have really killed him over the course of his career. He's currently going pick number 188. But he's still, once again, I'm all about the value, and there's not many guys that have 20-20 potential. And if he stays healthy, he will steal 20 bases and hit 20 home runs. I'm very confident in saying that. I'm not confident in saying that he's going to stay healthy, but I am confident in saying that if he is, that he has that ability to do that, and maybe even more. I mean, he's still very fast, and I said it in a previous episode, he's kind of batting in that second leadoff spot, so he's still going to score runs even though he doesn't get as many at-bats with Kepler, Polanco, Cruz, Donaldson all batting right behind him once you get to the top of that lineup. But at pick 188, he's a guy that can get you 20-20, and I don't have a problem. I have him a lot as one of my bench guys, and if he gets injured, you cut ties or you throw him on the IL, but I'll take him as a later guy in the 18th, 19th, 20th round.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely a guy that was supposed to be really hell of a ball player. Injuries have killed him. So at pick 188, though, I mean, at the bottom of the lineup and then at the top of the lineup, you have guys who just aren't going to get on base. I'm definitely all on board at 188 for Buxton for sure.
Yeah, and I remember a year ago, I think he was going right around pick 100, but I think kind of expectations have tempered at this point. So when you talk about risk-reward in the draft, I think there's a lot of risk for that, or a lot of reward for and very little risk at 188. So that's why I like him.
Absolutely.
And then they have a few bench guys that are being drafted right now. Williams Estirio, Marwin Gonzalez. Both of those guys have multi-position eligibility. Kind of going to be in and out of that lineup, playing different positions as guys need rest days. I won't be drafting any of them right off the bat. If there's an injury, they're definitely worth monitoring just because this lineup is so potent.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Marwin Gonzalez, though, he was definitely solid, but he's not guys that I would start. I mean, maybe possibly leave on the bench, but it just starts to – the lineup itself is just I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Can you edit it out?
Yeah, no, that's not a big deal. It's actually kind of perfect too because
All right, hold on 1 second. What is going on? Hold on 1 second. My mom called me, and I guess it put me on hold.
oh, that makes sense then because it was weird.
Yeah. Should be good to go. I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, you're good. No, actually, it's kind of perfect because we were already ending the lineup, so I can just cut it right there and then go into me talking about the rotation. So it's perfect.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Nice shot. My mom called, and I was like, oh, fuck. I'll call her back later.
All right. So we'll move into the rotation now and kicking it off. First for them is Jose Barrios. He's currently going pick 80. We just had an article come out about him being a Cy Young candidate. I'm not quite as high as the guy that wrote that article on Barrios. I think that he offers a lot of value at pick 80. You know, he's going beyond guys like Paddock and Castillo and Giolito that we've talked about previously. So I think pick 80, he offers great upside at that spot. But I think that he's more of a two guy in a rotation. I don't know if he's ever going to bring himself to ace status. I mean, his metrics, he got hit around a little bit, but I think he's more of a innings eater, 200 innings, 200 Ks, maybe a 3.5, 3.6 ERA. Not a guy that I'm going to say is going to win the Cy Young, but, definitely a solid pitcher. And at pick 80, good value.
I'm on the fence with him. I love Barrios. I think he could very well win the Cy Young, though, if his ERA comes down. That's the only concern for me.
Right.
He has to take more control in his command. He needs to have more control of the strike zone for him to he makes a lot of batters miss, though. He just needs to take it easy, and he needs to start throwing pitches more low, because a lot of his off-speed pitches end up being too high to the point where it's like right at the sweet spot for a batter.
Yep.
So if he lays off that, he very well could be a Cy Young pitcher, though. I don't think that's out of the question. The talent's there. But nonetheless, at pick 80, I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to take him. That's great value for me from Barrios.
Yep, I agree. Then second in that rotation is Jake Odorizzi. He is currently going pick 181. I've always liked Odorizzi. It seems like I always end up with him somehow. But at pick 181, I just think it's good value. I mean, we've already talked about how good this lineup is. He's going to have a chance to win some games. He gets you some strikeouts. His ERA is probably going to be mid-threes. But when he's healthy, he can eat innings for you, and really he's going to pick up some wins, pick up some strikeouts, a very reasonable whip, and I just think he's a solid pitcher, and at the end of a draft, I'll take a guy like that.
Oh, for sure. Odorizzi is a veteran who just commands the strike zone. But again, he's a mid-3 ERA guy. He's definitely been one of my favorite streamers for the past 3 years in fantasy baseball. I love me some Odorizzi, so if I can get him late in draft / stream, I'm all on it.
And then number 3 in that rotation, Kenta Maeda, currently going pick 170. He's not a guy that I've ever been overly high on. However, after I looked at his metrics, I think I'm actually on the bandwagon a little bit. He's going pick 170, and I couldn't believe how advanced all of his statistics were as far as batters really struggled to hit him hard. He had a good K rate last year, great control. I mean, really everything that you look for in a pitcher. So pick 170 with a good lineup on a good team. Actually, I'll take him now, and I think that offers good value and good upside.
Yeah, I completely agree. Maeda is going to be very nice in this rotation. I feel like he's definitely a good fit for this ballpark also. He strikes out. He's a good pitcher, especially pitching third in this rotation. It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, I agree. The rest of this rotation is very unexciting. And by unexciting, I mean not good. I don't think I would even maybe I could stream them, but number 4 listed right now is Homer Bailey, who's made probably the most money per loss in Major League history. So, you have, I mean, if you want to list his accomplishments, I guess maybe you could consider that an accomplishment for his bank account, but he allows a ton of home runs too. So in this ballpark, man, I mean, that is not a good fit. I mean, he's a fly ball pitcher, and no way. I don't think I would even stream him, honestly. He's a guy that's just all over the place. Some people thought he had some potential with the Reds. I never really saw it, so I've never been on the Homer Bailey bandwagon. Then they have Julius Chachin at the number 5 spot right now. Once again, he's a ground ball pitcher, so maybe if you really need to pick a guy at the back end of this rotation to stream, that would be my guy. Not a big fan of either one of those two. And then I'll just mention quickly, Michael Pineda is currently suspended for 60 games. He had a ton of potential coming up with the Yankees. He's going pick 262 right now. Really low ownership percentage. I would imagine only if you had an NA spot in a really deep league you would draft him. But, I'd keep my eye out on him. He's shown flashes of potential in the past. But I remember him coming up. I remember actually here in Binghamton watching a game when he was with the Yankees, the Trenton Thunder versus the Binghamton Mets, where it was Pineda versus Noah Syndergaard. And that was a really big deal here. So, that was supposed to be the two next great pitchers in Major League Baseball. So he hasn't really lived up to that. But, if you want to grab a guy, a streamer, when he's healthy, I'd pick him up, keep an eye out, see how he adjusts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the back half of this lineup is there. I mean, Pineda, Homer Bailey, Chachez. I guess I'll go Pineda. If I had to choose one, I do Pineda. I mean, the guy can never stop shooting, though, as well. He had the pine tar on his glove.
He can't help it. He comes from the Yankees.
And then he had the PED incident. The guy is just horrible. I mean, when he does pitch, he's not bad at all, actually. He's kind of decent. But he didn't live up to his potential either. Or Bailey just sucks, too. I mean, you mentioned before. He's definitely gotten big contracts for being a very, very mediocre pitcher. I don't want to stream any of these guys now that I think about it. No way.
Yeah,
I'll stream someone else that's younger.
I agree. I wouldn't either, but not much else to say there, I don't think. In their bullpen, we'll move to that quickly. They have a few guys being drafted. Taylor Rodgers is currently their closer, going 107. If you're in a hold league, they have a few guys that can put up some hold numbers with Tyler Duffy and Sergio Romo going at the end of drafts. Both solid guys. Romeo's kind of been up and down in his career, or Romo, I should say, has been up and down in his career. But Taylor Rodgers, once again, the Twins are going to be a good team. Going pick 107. He's going as one of the top 7-8 closers in drafts, so I can't really argue with it. Seems like his job's pretty secure, pretty safe with a good team, so I think it's fair for him.
I agree. It's completely fair for Romo. I like Romo and Rodgers a lot, actually. I mean, and the Twins are going to win a lot of games, so if I can end up taking those two guys to being my two relief pitchers, I would actually be on board with it. Rodgers is very young, and Romo has that veteran mindset to where he's been around the block where he knows he can hold his own if he's not in a big-time situation. He's not the closer that he is, of course, but he's definitely someone that's very solid. I would take him as my holds guy.
For sure. All right, let's move over to a few impact prospects here. The Twins currently have the 7th ranked farm system. Kind of interesting to me. All of their top prospects are offensive guys, so I don't think the trend of them having a dominant offense is going to change anytime soon.
No, they not at all.
Guys in the back end of that rotation, and I don't think that's really going to improve through their farm system from what I can see, but I'll mention first Royce Lewis, who's kind of a consensus top 10 prospect, former number 1 overall pick. He'll most likely, with a shortened season, he probably won't debut now. If it was a full season, I think he was going to make his debut later in the year. I'm kind of interested to see where he fits in long term. From what I've read, they really like Polanco. They really don't want to move him from that position. Royce Lewis actually has started to play a little bit of second base and outfield. So maybe they look at him as a potential replacement for Buxton if he's not the long-term answer there. Maybe Nelson Cruz going to retire, so you can put a guy like Rosario at DH and move Royce Lewis into the outfield. But that's my biggest issue with Royce Lewis at this point, is he really doesn't have a position or a defined role with the Twins. And he's been okay in the minor leagues. He's been a solid defender. He'll put up some steal numbers, hasn't showed a ton of power. I think he's just a very solid, well-rounded player. I don't know if he's ever going to be a dominant fantasy force, but I'm interested to see where his long-term fit is with the Twins.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Lewis in that second spot, and if you replace him with Polanco. But you also said the Twins like Polanco a lot. Maybe Buxton's time's up. Maybe they move Lewis out to the outfield. Lewis is going to start somewhere in this lineup within the next 2 years. He's doing decent in the minors. Like you said, his hitting's not there, but his defense is really great. Mm-hmm. I love me some Royce Lewis. I'm all on board.
A lot of it might depend on how Arez does. If Arez doesn't perform at second base, maybe you shift over Polanco or you put Royce Lewis there. That could be another option too, depending on how he shakes up. Arez maybe could be more of a utility guy to play because he plays all around the diamond right now. So maybe he plays second, some third, some outfield. So that could be a possibility as well.
For sure, maybe move one of them to first, and maybe Sano's time could be up as well.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah.
Then other guys they have. Well, speaking of it, one of probably their future first baseman is Alex Kirilloff. He plays outfield and for him and Trevor Larnach, who is also an outfield prospect for him that should be making his debut. Both of them very powerful outfielders, going to come up. They fit perfectly into the Twins lineup. They're both guys that hit 30 home runs. So I expect, once again, I don't know where some of these young guys are going to fit in because their lineup seems so stacked now. But once they're in the lineup, those are going to be fantasy relevant guys hitting a lot of home runs.
Oh, for sure. And I'm actually a huge Larnach believer. I love me some Trevor Larnach. She was great at Oregon State. God, the guy could just rip the fucking ball. I can't wait for him to be in the majors. And in this lineup, shit. Those guys better fucking play their hearts out because there's hungry offensive guys that are just chomping at the bits waiting. As soon as guys like Polanco or Sano, if they start slipping and if they start slumping, I mean, there's three really good prospects waiting.
Now that I'm really looking at him, we're talking about it too. I think that this is probably a make or break year for Byron Buxton. I mean, if he doesn't perform, you might never see him really be a starting outfielder for the Twins again. Maybe he can be their fourth outfielder off the bench, and maybe that's what he's best suited for at this point, a speedy fourth outfielder. But, I mean, you have these big prospects coming up. If Buxton doesn't stay healthy and doesn't perform, this is probably the last time we're going to hear from him.
And you really think about it, right? The three guys that I think could not perform in this lineup, or at least live up to the expectations, Polanco is definitely a solid player, but if he starts to slump, and that second hole it's a huge deal because you have guys like Donaldson, Cruz, Rosario, and Garver all chopping at the bits, hoping you get on base somehow. And if Polanco doesn't do his thing, and if Sano doesn't fall through, and same with Buxton, then you could easily put Kirilloff over there at first, and then you can put Larnach out there at center, and then you can just switch Lewis in for Polanco.
Yep.
Oh man, that would be very, very dangerous.
And it really doesn't affect the Twins. The Twins are ready to go either way. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah. And Reese will hold his own because he makes contact on so many pitches you wouldn't expect most batters to make contact on. He is a very underrated hitter, and he's really good defensively too. He's a guy that I like. This team's going to be very fun to watch. I can't wait.
Yeah, I agree. Any other notes you want to make on him before we wrap it up here?
No, I mean, now that I think about it, gosh, I know I had the Indians winning this thing, but the division, but fuck, I could have the Twins winning it too.
Yeah, no, that's why I think it'll be a good race at the top. It just the rotation really puts it over the top for me. I mean, obviously the Twins lineup is way deeper because once we got beyond those first five for the Indians, we're kind of like, okay, not very much relevance, but I mean, 1 to 9 here is very relevant. And then you have 3 prospects that are ready to make their debuts that could slot in. So, I mean, there's 12 guys that could be drafted from the tour, really play fantasy relevance in the Twins lineup.
Yeah, I mean, It's going to be a fun race. Let's see if hitting can overcome pitching, but I doubt it. Just because Bieber, and Clevenger, that pitching lineup for the Indians is too much. And Barrios can hold his own, but he doesn't have help behind him. So that's what the difference maker will be.
Yep, for sure. So I think that's all that we have on the Twins. So Thank you once again, everybody, for tuning in. If you don't already, make sure you like the Fantasy Holics on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. FantasyHolic. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I cannot forget our new website, which has lots of great content on there, www.thefantasyholics.com. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you again soon.
We will see you later.
Peace out, Girl Scout.